That bathroom window showed me the most painful scene a woman can ever witness, and it wasn't what you might be imagining. My name is Eleanor. I am 97 years old, and this story I am about to tell happened more than 60 years ago, when I was still a young woman of just 35, married for 15 years to a man I thought I knew like the back of my hand. Before I continue, I'd like to ask a small favor of you who are listening now. If you can leave a like on this video, I would appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Subscribe to the Grandma's Diary channel too, to help me continue sharing these life stories. And tell me here in the comments where you are watching me from. I want to know if there are folks from all over the United States and beyond listening to me. Well, I'm going to start from the beginning because this story needs to be told right, with all the details, so you can understand the pain I felt and the strength I needed to have. It was 1962. I lived on a small farm in rural Oklahoma, not far from Tulsa. The house was simple, a wood-frame farmhouse with linoleum floors in the kitchen and service areas, but we had hardwood floors in the bedrooms and the living room. We weren't rich, but we didn't go without, either. My husband, Roy, looked after a herd of cattle and a plot of land where we grew corn, beans, and vegetables. I took care of the house, the chickens, the garden, and our 3 children. My children were my life. The oldest, Frank, was 8 years old. The middle one, Bobby, was 6. And the littlest one, my sweet Caroline, was just 4 years old. They were healthy, obedient kids who helped me where they could and filled that house with joy. I was happy, or at least I believed I was. Roy was never a man of many words, but he never disrespected me. He worked hard, came home every evening, ate his dinner, played a little with the kids, and then sat on the porch bench to smoke his cigarette. It was a quiet life, predictable, without big thrills, but it was my life, and I was content with it. Everything started to change in March of that year. My younger sister, Marilyn, came to live with us. Marilyn was 28 years old and had just ended a 3-year engagement. The boy she was going to marry called off the wedding a week before the big day. It was a scandal in the family. My sister was devastated, ashamed, aimless. My parents didn't want her in their house anymore. My daddy said she brought shame to the family name that people whispered behind her back at church. It was Roy who suggested she come live with us. Poor Marilyn, he said. It's not her fault she was left at the altar. We have space here. She can help you with the kids and the house. I thought it was sweet of him. I thought it was kindness, compassion. What a good man I had, right? A man who took in my disgraced sister without complaining, offering her a roof and food. We fixed up a small room in the back of the house for her. It was a small room we used to store dry goods and canning supplies, but we cleaned it all out. We put in an old bed, a trunk for her clothes, and a nightstand with a small lamp. It wasn't a luxury, but it was dignified. Marilyn arrived on a Friday afternoon with 2 suitcases and eyes red from crying. I hugged my sister. I felt sorry for her. She was pretty. She was always prettier than me. She had long, straight hair, bright eyes, a slim waist. I understood why her fiancé had been interested in her, but I also didn't understand why he had called off the wedding. Don't you worry, I told her. You are welcome here. This will help you pass the time, and soon you'll forget this sadness. The first few days, Marilyn almost didn't leave her room. She cried a lot, barely ate, but little by little, she started to cheer up. She began helping in the kitchen, taking care of the chickens, playing with the children. Caroline loved having her aunt living with us. Aunt Marilyn is pretty like a movie star, she would say. Roy was also very attentive to my sister. He would chat with her at the end of the day. He'd ask if she needed anything, bring her fruit from the orchard. I thought all of that was very gentlemanly of him. How lucky was I to have such a kind-hearted husband. What a fool I was. Things started to get strange about 2 months after Marilyn arrived. Roy started getting up at midnight. The first time it happened, I didn't even think much of it. He shifted in bed, groaned quietly, and said, "Eleanor, I think I ate something that didn't agree with me. I have a terrible stomach ache." "Do you want me to make you some peppermint tea?" I asked, still half asleep. "No need. I'm going to the bathroom. It should pass." He got up, turned on the flashlight that sat on the nightstand, and left the room. I went back to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, he was already sleeping beside me again. I didn't even remember the episode clearly. But then it happened again, and again, and again. Every single night, always around 2:00 the morning, Roy would wake up complaining of a stomach ache. Always the same excuse, always the same time. He would take the flashlight, go to the bathroom that was built onto the back of the house, lock the door from the inside, and stay there for over an hour. At first, I truly thought he had some intestinal problem. I made him tea with mint, chamomile, fennel. I avoided cooking anything too spicy or greasy, but nothing helped. Every night, off he went to the bathroom. It was in the 3rd week that I started to get suspicious. First, because Roy had never had any stomach trouble. In 15 years of marriage, I had never seen him complain of stomach pain or bowel issues. He ate everything. He had a stomach of steel. Second, because when he returned from the bathroom, he was different. I pretended to be asleep, but I lay there paying attention. When he lay down beside me again, I smelled something different on him, a smell of soap, water, cologne, as if he had washed himself all over, perfumed himself, and his hair was wet, combed back. Who showers and puts on cologne in the middle of the night for a stomach ache? I started observing better during the day. Roy was different, vainer. He started taking better care of his appearance, getting his hair cut more frequently at the barber in town, wearing cleaner, well-ironed shirts. He was also more distracted. When I spoke to him, it seemed like he wasn't paying attention. He lived in the clouds. And there was another thing. He started leaving the house more during the day. He said he was going to check the fences, that he was going to buy something at Mr. Johnson's general store, that he was going to visit our neighbor, Bill, but he took hours to return. And when he returned, he came with that same, distant look. I started wondering if he was with another woman. The idea made me nauseous, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. A man married for 15 years, suddenly taking care of his looks, leaving the house, perfuming himself in the middle of the night. But who could it be? In our parts, everyone knew everyone. If Roy were having an affair with some woman from the area, I would have already heard the gossip. The church ladies told everything. I tried to talk to him once. "Roy," I said while making breakfast, "you've been acting very strange. Is something going on?" He didn't even lift his eyes from his plate. "Strange? How?" "I don't know. You're going out a lot, distracted, and those stomach aches every night. What are you trying to insinuate, Eleanor?" He looked at me with a hardness I had never seen in those eyes. "Nothing. I'm just worried." "Well, keep quiet and stop inventing things in your head. I work all day on this farm. I come home tired, and I still have to listen to interrogations." He got up from the table, grabbed his hat, and slammed the door on his way out. I stood there with my heart squeezed tight. Roy had never treated me that way. He had never raised his voice at me, never been rude. That was the day I knew for sure. There was something very bad happening. I started paying attention to everything, every detail, every movement of his, and that was when I noticed another strange thing. Roy and Marilyn almost didn't speak to each other in front of me. This might seem silly, but think about it. In the beginning, when Marilyn arrived, Roy chatted with her, asked how she was. He was attentive. But now, they barely exchanged glances during the day. He treated my sister as if she were invisible, and she also avoided being near him. Why would that be? One night, I was lying next to Roy, waiting. I knew that soon he would get up with the usual excuse, and he didn't take long. 2 a.m. on the dot, he started moving. "Another damn stomach ache," he muttered under his breath. "Want me to go with you?" I asked. "For what? What are you going to do in the bathroom?" "Eleanor, let me go alone." He took the flashlight and left. I heard his footsteps through the house. I heard the bathroom door close. I heard the latch being slid shut. I lay there in the dark with my heart beating fast. Something inside me said, "Get up, go see what he's doing." But I was afraid. Afraid of what? I didn't know. Afraid of discovering something that would destroy me? Maybe. I stayed there lying down for another half hour, immobile, until I heard the bathroom door open. Roy's footsteps returning. He entered the room, turned off the flashlight, and lay down again. That smell of soap, of cologne, wet hair, and it was that night, lying next to that man I no longer recognized, that I made a decision. I was going to find out what he was doing in that bathroom every night, even if it killed me with pain. I spent the following days like a ghost inside my own house. I feigned normality, cooked the meals, took care of the children, swept the floor, washed clothes on the washboard, but my head was far away. I was planning. I needed to discover what Roy did in that bathroom every night, and I needed to find out soon, before the doubt drove me crazy once and for all. The bathroom was at the back of the house, in an addition Roy had built about 5 years prior. Before that, we used an outhouse way in the back of the yard. But when Frank was born, Roy said he wanted more comfort for the family. So, he built that bathroom with his own hands. It had a toilet, a bathtub, a small mirror hanging on the wall, and a narrow window that looked out to the backyard near the chicken coop. That window was high, almost at the height of my shoulder. During the day, we left it open to air out. At night, Roy always closed it. It was regarding that window that I thought, if I went out the kitchen door quietly, I could get to the back without being seen. The yard had some fruit trees, the chicken coop, the clothesline where we hung laundry. If I approached along the side of the house, I could look through the bathroom window without him seeing me. The idea terrified me. I had never spied on anyone in my life. I was always an upright woman who trusted people, who believed in a person's word, but that situation was consuming me from the inside. I needed to know the truth, even if it hurt. I waited for the right night. It was a Thursday. I remember it to this day. Thursday, the 17th of May, 1962. It had rained during the afternoon and the night was cool, smelling of wet earth. The children went to sleep early, tired from playing in the yard. Marilyn also retired early to her little room, right after dinner. Roy and I stayed in the living room for a while. He was reading an old newspaper he had gotten in town. I was pretending to hem a pair of Frank's trousers, but my fingers were trembling so much I pricked my finger with the needle twice. At 9:30 p.m., we went to bed. Roy turned off the bedroom lamp and turned on his side, his back to me. In a few minutes, he was already snoring. I lay there, staring at the dark ceiling. My heart was beating so loud I was afraid it would wake him just by the sound of it. I waited. I waited for hours. I heard the clock in the living room chiming the hours. 10 chimes. 11. Midnight, 1 a.m. My body was tense, rigid. Every muscle ached from so much tension. 1:30 a.m. was when Roy started to move. He turned in bed, let out a sigh, then started to sit up slowly. I closed my eyes quickly. I pretended to be deeply asleep. I heard him turn on the flashlight. The dim light illuminated the room. I heard him putting on his work boots. "Damn stomach ache," he muttered softly, as if talking to himself. His steps left the room. I heard the door close softly. I heard him crossing the house. I heard the bathroom door close. I heard the latch being slid from the inside. I waited about 2 more minutes. My heart was racing, my hands sweating cold. I got up from the bed with all the care in the world. I didn't turn on any light. I knew that house with my eyes closed. I knew where to step so the floorboards wouldn't creak. I grabbed my cardigan that was hanging on the chair and put it over my shoulders. The night was cold. Barefoot, I crossed the hallway, passed by the children's room door. Everyone sleeping. Thank God. I reached the kitchen. The back door was unlatched, not locked with a key. I opened it slowly. The squeak of the hinges made me freeze, but no one woke up. I stepped out into the yard. The ground was wet from the afternoon rain. The cold, damp grass touched my bare feet. There was a moon that night, almost full, illuminating everything with a silvery, half-ghostly light. I could see the trees, the chicken coop, the clothesline, and I could see the dim light of the flashlight coming through the bathroom window. My body was shivering. I don't know if it was from cold or fear, probably both. I started walking slowly, hugging the wall of the house, until I got closer to the bathroom. My feet sank into the mud, but made no noise. It felt like I was floating, as if all of this were a nightmare. I got close to the window. My heart beat so hard I felt the pulse in my neck, in my temples, in my wrists. I pressed myself against the cold, damp wooden siding. I took a deep breath. Then, slowly, I peeked through the window. What I saw in that moment changed my life forever. Roy was standing in front of the small mirror attached to the wall. He had taken off his shirt and was washing himself with water from the basin. He ran the wet cloth over his face, his neck, under his arms. Then he took a bar of soap and lathered his whole body like someone going out to a party. He dried himself with a towel, took the shirt he had removed, and put it back on. But it was a different shirt, nicer, newer, one I had never seen him wear. Where had he gotten that shirt? Then he took a small bottle that was on the shelf next to the basin. Cologne. He put it on his face, on his neck. The scent reached me through the open window. Then he took the comb he kept in his trouser pocket and combed his hair with care, looking in the mirror, fixing every strand. He looked like a young man getting ready to meet his sweetheart. But that wasn't what shocked me. It was what came next. Roy crouched down and lifted a loose board in the bathroom floor. I didn't even know there was a loose board there. He lifted the board and pulled out a cloth bundle from inside. He placed the bundle on the edge of the tub and opened it. Even from a distance, by the dim light of the flashlight, I could see what it was. Money. A lot of money. There were bills of $10, $20, $50. There were coins. There was more money there than I saw in a whole year. Maybe more money than I had seen in my entire life. Roy started counting the bills, separating them into piles. His lips moved, doing the math. Then he took a folded paper that was with the money and read it, furrowing his brow. He stayed like that for about 10 minutes, counting money, reading that paper. Then he put everything back in the cloth bundle, tied it tight, and put it back under the floorboard. My mind was racing. Where had that money come from? Why was Roy hiding it from me? What was that paper he was reading? But the answer to those questions came in a way I would never have imagined. Roy turned off the flashlight. I shrank against the wall, holding my breath. I thought he was going to go back inside the house, to our room, but that wasn't what happened. I heard the bathroom door open. I saw his silhouette coming out, but instead of going toward the house, he went to the other side, to the back of the yard, toward where Marilyn's room was. I felt my stomach turn. No, it couldn't be. But it was. I stood there, stuck to the bathroom wall, watching. The moon illuminated everything. I could see perfectly. Roy walked to the door of my sister's room. He knocked softly, once, twice. The door opened. Marilyn was there, in the doorway. She was wearing a white nightgown, her hair loose falling over her shoulders. Even from afar, I could see she had fixed herself up, prepared for that moment. Roy entered the room. The door closed behind him. I was left there in the middle of the wet yard, barefoot, trembling with cold and shock. My husband, my sister, the two people I trusted most in the world, the two people I had welcomed, cared for, loved. I felt my legs go weak. I sat on the wet ground right there, between the chickens and the garden. I put my hands over my mouth to stifle the sound. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run to that little room, break down the door, and tear their eyes out. But I couldn't move. I stayed there. I don't know for how long. Maybe 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. Time had stopped. Then, the door to the room opened again. Roy came out, but he wasn't alone. Marilyn came out with him. The two of them stood there, talking softly. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see the gestures. I saw him taking her hand. I saw her leaning her head on his shoulder. I saw him stroking her face with affection, with the same affection he had once stroked my face. Then he handed her something. A folded paper. She took it, opened it, read it quickly, and smiled. She smiled. My sister smiled happily looking at that paper. He gave her a kiss on the forehead. She kissed him on the mouth. And it was in that moment that I understood everything. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a one-night betrayal, a moment of weakness, a mistake. This was a relationship. They loved each other, or at least thought they loved each other. And that hidden money, that paper he had read, that paper he had just handed her, they were planning something big. Roy said goodbye to her and headed back toward the house. Marilyn stayed in the doorway of her room a while longer, looking at the paper in her hand with that smile on her face. Then she went in and closed the door. I needed to get out of there. I needed to get back inside before he noticed my absence. I got up from the ground with difficulty. My legs were numb from the cold and sitting in the wet dirt. I returned to the kitchen as best I could, stumbling, almost falling. I closed the back door, crossed the house in the dark. When I got to the bedroom, Roy hadn't returned yet. He had probably gone to the bathroom again to get rid of the evidence, to wash Marilyn's scent off him. I took off my soaked cardigan, threw it in a corner, lay in bed, and pulled the quilt up to my chin. My body shook uncontrollably. I heard his footsteps arriving. I heard him entering the room, heard him taking off his boots. I felt the mattress sink when he lay down beside me. I heard his breathing becoming calmer, deeper. In a few minutes, he was sleeping. How could he sleep? How could he lie down next to me after leaving my sister's arms and sleep peacefully as if nothing had happened? I lay there all night with my eyes open, staring at the ceiling. My clothes were wet, my feet dirty with mud, but I didn't even care. My mind wouldn't stop. The images of that night played over and over in my mind like a movie. Roy fixing himself up, the hidden money, him entering Marilyn's room, the two of them kissing, the paper, her smile. When the sun started to rise, I was still awake. I got out of bed like the living dead. Roy was still sleeping deeply. I changed my clothes, put on a clean dress, tied back my hair, washed my face in the basin in the room. I looked in the small mirror I had. The woman looking back at me had sunken, swollen eyes with purple circles. I had wrinkles I had never noticed before. I looked like I had aged 10 years in one night. I went to the kitchen to make breakfast. I lit the wood stove, put the pot of water on, got out the coffee, got out the biscuits left over from the day before, everything mechanical. My body moved on its own while my head was far away. Frank was the first to wake up. He came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, can I have breakfast?" I gave him coffee with milk, buttered a biscuit. He ate happily, swinging his little legs in the chair. Then came Bobby and Caroline. I gave coffee to all three. They talked amongst themselves, laughed, fought over the last piece of sweet bread. Children being children, they knew nothing, they suspected nothing. To them, this was just another normal day. Roy appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for work. "Morning." I didn't answer. I placed a cup of coffee in front of him. He drank it in silence. Marilyn was the last to appear. She entered the kitchen yawning, with messy hair, wearing a simple cotton dress. "Good morning, everyone," the children answered. Roy barely nodded. I looked at her. I looked right into her eyes, those bright, pretty eyes that had always seemed so innocent. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away, took a cup, and poured herself coffee. Did she know? Did she realize I had seen everything? No. She was too calm, too relaxed. They didn't know anything. They thought they were clever, careful, that I was too stupid to notice. And maybe I really had been stupid until that moment. But I wasn't anymore. That morning, while I washed the breakfast dishes and watched Roy go out to work and Marilyn play with Caroline in the yard, I made a decision. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I was going to find out exactly what they were planning. I was going to find out where that money had come from, what that paper said, what they intended to do. And when I knew everything, every detail, every lie, every betrayal, then I would act. But I was going to act my way. At the right moment. With intelligence. Because one thing I had learned on that terrible night: pain doesn't kill. Betrayal doesn't kill. What kills is remaining a fool. And I wasn't going to do that anymore. The days that followed that night were the hardest of my life. Not because of the pain I was already feeling that, but because of the need to pretend I knew nothing. I woke up in the morning, made coffee, served Roy and Marilyn as if they were normal people. I watched my husband go out to work, watched my sister helping with the kids, and I needed to smile, talk, act as if my world hadn't collapsed. Some people think the worst pain is discovering a betrayal. It's not. The worst pain is having to live with the traitors, look them in the face every day, serve food at the table, wash their clothes, and pretend everything is fine. That is what corrodes the soul from the inside. But I had a goal now, and that goal kept me standing. I needed to discover everything, every detail, where the money came from, what they planned, when they intended to execute the plan. Only then could I protect myself. Only then could I protect my children. I started observing everything with different eyes. In the following days, I noticed that Roy was leaving the house a lot, more than usual. He said he was going to check the cattle, fix fences, talk to a neighbor about buying a calf, but he took hours. Sometimes he left right after breakfast and only returned in the mid-afternoon. Where was he going? What was he doing? One morning he said he was going to town to settle some papers at the notary. He thought I hadn't noticed, but he fixed himself up more than usual. Good shirt, clean hat, he even polished his old boots. When he left, I went to the room we shared and started searching. I didn't know what exactly I was looking for, but I knew I had to find something. I opened the drawer where he kept the farm documents. There were deeds, old bills of sale, receipts from the feed store, all kind of messy, the way Roy always left things. But there was something different. Some newer papers folded at the back of the drawer. I took them with a trembling hand. I opened them. It was a receipt for the sale of 5 heads of cattle, signed by Roy, dated 3 weeks prior. I furrowed my brow. Roy had sold cattle and hadn't told me? We had 18 heads of cattle in total. They were our wealth, our security. We only sold when there was an urgent need for money, and even then, we talked about it first. I kept searching. I found 2 more receipts, one for the sale of a piece of land on the hill, another for the sale of farm equipment, a harrow, a plow, tools. I felt my blood run cold. Roy was selling our assets in secret without telling me, and I knew where that money was going. Under that board in the bathroom floor. But why? What for? The answer came like a punch to the gut. He was gathering money to run away with Marilyn. I put the papers back in their place, exactly as they were. I couldn't let him notice I had snooped. I returned to the kitchen with my legs shaking. I sat in the chair trying to breathe. The children were playing in the yard. Marilyn was washing clothes at the washboard, singing a song. Singing as if nothing were happening, as if she weren't destroying her own sister's family. In the following days, I intensified my surveillance. When Roy went out, I looked for more documents. When Marilyn went to the store to buy something, I went into her room. It was one of those times that I found the paper. It was hidden inside an old Bible that sat on top of her trunk. A paper folded in 4, hidden between the pages of the Book of Psalms. I opened it with my heart racing. It was a letter written in Roy's handwriting. I knew that handwriting because I was the one who had helped him improve his writing years ago when we were newlyweds. The letter was to Marilyn, and it said things that made me want to vomit. He wrote that he loved her, that he had never loved anyone that way, that the marriage with me had been a mistake, that he had only married me because my parents had land and it helped his family. But he had never felt anything true for me. He said he was gathering money, selling what he could, that in a few more weeks he would have enough, that then they would run away together to Los Angeles, that there he would get a job in a factory, start a new life far from everyone. He said she needed to be patient, that they couldn't raise suspicions, that I couldn't suspect anything until they were ready. And at the end he wrote, "When we leave, she can keep the house and the kids. It's what she always wanted anyway, to be a mother and housewife. She won't miss me." I read those words 3 times, 4 times, trying to believe that was real. She won't miss me. 15 years of marriage, 3 children, a whole life built together. And to him, I was just someone who wouldn't miss him. I folded the letter back up, put it in the exact place where it was. I left Marilyn's room with my eyes burning, but without shedding a tear. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. I started to form a plan in my head. But before that, I needed to know exactly how much he had sold, how much money he had gathered, what else he planned to sell. Because by the law of that time, everything that belonged to the family was in his name. I was just the wife. I had no right to anything. Roy could sell everything, take all the money, and I would be left with nothing. Even worse, I could lose the house because the deed was in Roy's name. If he sold the house before leaving, my children and I would literally be on the street. The rage I felt was different from anything I had ever felt in my life. It wasn't that hot, explosive rage that makes you scream and break things. It was a cold, calculated rage that spread through my body like ice. One night, pretending to go to the bathroom, I waited for Roy to sleep and went out slowly through the back door. I went to the bathroom, lit a small candle I had brought with me. Carefully, I lifted the floorboard. My heart beat strong, afraid he would wake up and catch me there. The cloth bundle was there. I took it, opened it. The money I saw gave me certainty. Roy had gathered a lot, an awful lot. I counted quickly almost $4,000. But besides the money, there were other things inside the bundle. Papers, documents. I took one. It was a drafted deed of sale. Roy had papers drawn up authorizing a realtor in town to sell the house in his name. The house. Our house. Where I had raised my children. Where I had spent 15 years of my life. He was going to sell it, and I would only know when it was too late. I took another paper. It was a bus ticket. 2 tickets, actually. Greyhound, from Tulsa to Los Angeles. Date, June 10th. I looked at the wall, trying to calculate. It was May 23rd. Less than 3 weeks left. In less than 3 weeks, Roy and Marilyn would leave, taking everything, leaving me and the children with nothing. I put everything back, put the board in its place, blew out the candle, returned inside the house like a ghost. I lay down next to Roy. He slept peacefully, snoring softly. I lay there looking at him in the gloom. That man I had loved, respected, whom I had trusted blindly. That man who was about to destroy me. But there was a moment there, in that bed, staring at the ceiling in the dark, that something changed inside me. The pain I was feeling began to transform into something else, into determination, into strength. Because I realized one thing. They thought I was weak. They thought I was stupid. They thought I would accept everything, quiet, like a poor, abandoned woman. But they didn't really know me. I was the daughter of farming people, people who worked from sunup to sundown, people who didn't give up easy. My mother had raised 7 children through droughts, through sickness, through deaths. But my grandmother had been widowed at 30 and had run a farm alone. I had that blood in my veins, and I wasn't going to let 2 traitors destroy me. In the following days, I began to act. First, I needed help, but I couldn't tell just anyone. It needed to be someone trustworthy, someone who could help me legally, because I knew the law wasn't on my side. I thought of Attorney Miller. He was a lawyer in town, a distant cousin of my mother, a serious, respected man. If anyone could guide me, it was him. I invented an excuse. I told Roy I was going to town to take Caroline to the doctor because she had a persistent cough. He didn't even question it. I went to Attorney Miller's office, a small place with shelves full of thick law books. He received me with surprise. "Eleanor, what a miracle seeing you. Is everything all right?" I closed the door behind me, sat in the chair he offered, and told him everything. I told him about the betrayal, the hidden money, the secret sales, the escape plan, the bus tickets, the papers to sell the house. Attorney Miller listened to me in silence, his face getting more serious. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Eleanor, you are in a very delicate situation. Legally, Roy can sell the assets that are in his name. You, as a wife, have rights, but enforcing them before he disappears is difficult." I felt the floor disappear beneath my feet. "So, there's nothing I can do?" He remained thoughtful for a moment. "Yes, there is. But you're going to need courage, and you're going to need to act fast." He explained to me that the sales Roy had made could be challenged if we could prove he was dissipating marital assets in anticipation of divorce or abandonment. He said I could file for an emergency order to freeze assets, but that takes time. However, if I could prove he was stealing the family's livelihood to run away— "Do you have the receipts for those sales? Can I get them?" "I know where they are." "And can you prove he hid the money?" "I know where it's hidden." "Then here is what you are going to do." Attorney Miller gave me a plan. A risky plan, but one that could work. I left that office with a paper in my hand, a paper that gave me a little hope. But I knew the hardest part was still to come, because to execute that plan, I would have to keep pretending. I would have to look Roy and Marilyn in the face every day, serve food, smile, and wait for the right moment. And the right moment was approaching. I returned home that afternoon with my head full of thoughts. The plan Attorney Miller had given me was risky, but it was my only chance. Every step would have to be calculated. One mistake, and Roy and Marilyn would discover everything ahead of time, and then I truly would be lost. The first step was to get the physical evidence. I needed the sale receipts, the documents, and mainly, I needed the money back. Because that money was mine by right, it was my children's. It had been built with years of the family's work. But how to get all that from under the floorboard without Roy noticing? I spent 2 whole days thinking about it, observing his movements, studying the house routine. Roy got up every night to meet Marilyn, but he only checked the money once or twice a week, always to count and confirm it was all there. The opportunity came on a Tuesday. Roy announced at breakfast that he was going to the county seat to settle a matter with a buyer. That was far, almost half a day's travel, there and back. He would leave early and only return late afternoon. My heart sped up. It was the chance I was waiting for. That morning, I acted normally. I packed his lunch, got the kids ready, fed the chickens. I watched Roy get in the truck and leave. Marilyn was washing clothes, singing as always. I waited for an hour to pass. Then I made up that I was going to neighbor Bill's house to get some eggs he had promised me. I left the kids playing in the yard under Marilyn's watch, but I didn't go to the neighbors. I circled around the back of the house, entered through the back door, and went straight to the bathroom. My hands were shaking when I lifted the floorboard. The cloth bundle was there, heavy, full. I took it carefully, as if it were a venomous snake. I opened it. The money was all there. $4,200. I counted quickly. Together were the papers, the draft deed for the house, the bus tickets, some sale receipts, 2 letters Marilyn had written to Roy. I didn't have time to read everything there. I needed to be fast. I took all the money, every bill, every coin. I left just $50, enough to make it look like there was still something there in case Roy decided to check sooner than I expected. I took all the important papers, the deed draft, the receipts, the tickets, the letters I left. I didn't need them as proof, and if they disappeared, Roy might suspect. I put everything inside my blouse. I tied it tight with a cloth so it wouldn't fall. My heart was beating so strong I thought I was going to faint right there. I put the board back exactly as it was. I cleaned any sign that I had checked. I left the bathroom. I locked the door from the outside with the key, as it always stayed during the day. I crossed the yard with my legs shaking. I entered the house through the back door. I went straight to my room. Under the bed, there was an old cedar chest that had belonged to my grandfather. No one ever looked in there. It was full of old quilts, linens, things we kept but never used. I opened the chest, shoved the bundle with the money and documents right at the bottom, under everything. I covered it with the quilts, closed the chest, took a deep breath. Done. The first part was finished. I left the house again. This time I really went to neighbor Bill's house. I bought a dozen eggs, talked about nonsense. I returned home. Marilyn hadn't even realized I had taken long. She was entertained playing with Caroline, braiding her hair. I looked at my sister. She was smiling. She seemed so innocent, so affectionate with my daughter. If I didn't know the truth, I would never imagine that woman was planning to destroy our family. Roy returned late in the afternoon, tired, complaining of the heat. He ate dinner, smoked his cigarette, went to sleep early. I stayed in the living room a while, pretending to sew, but my head was far away. I was thinking about the next step. Because having the money and documents wasn't enough. I needed witnesses. I needed other people to know what was happening. Because if it were just my word against Roy's, no one would believe me. A woman speaking ill of her husband? Everyone would think it was invention, jealousy, hysterics. I needed proof that no one could deny. Attorney Miller had explained, if I could gather Roy's family and my own family, show the evidence in front of everyone, make a public accusation, then things could change. Because in 1,962 inches the country, the community's opinion was worth more than any law. A man publicly denounced for bad conduct lost respect, and without respect, he couldn't sell anything. He couldn't do business, couldn't live in the region. It was a different form of justice, older, but it worked. In the following days, I started to prepare the ground. I went to my parents' house. They lived on a farm about 10 miles away. My daddy was old, nearly 70, but he was still respected in the region. My mama was a tough woman who didn't coddle anyone. I sat with the two of them on their porch and told them everything. My mama went pale. My daddy turned purple with rage. Marilyn. Our Marilyn. With her own sister's husband? His voice trembled. He had always defended Marilyn. He had been on her side when the fiancé called off the wedding, and now he discovered his youngest daughter was capable of this. Are you sure, Eleanor? Sure? Absolute. I showed the copies of documents I had brought with me. The receipts, the bus tickets. My daddy read everything with wide eyes. My mama cried softly, wiping tears with the corner of her apron. That wretch. That viper. Raising a daughter for this. My mama got up, went into the house, and returned with the family Bible in her hand. Eleanor, swear on this Bible that all this is true, that you saw it with your own eyes. I put my hand on the Bible. I swear to God and on this holy Bible that I saw with my own eyes Roy entering Marilyn's room in the middle of the night. I saw them kissing. I saw him handing her money, I read the letters they wrote. All of this is true. My daddy stood up from the chair, grabbed his hat. I'm going to talk to Roy's parents. I'm going to talk to the pastor. I'm going to talk to the sheriff. This isn't going to stay like this. I held his arm. No, Daddy, not yet. If you do it now, he'll run away with her ahead of time, and I won't recover anything. We need to wait for the right moment. I explained the plan Attorney Miller had given me. My daddy listened, furrowing his brow. And when would this right moment be? Sunday. Sunday, June 3rd. We're going to have a gathering here at your house. We're going to call the whole family, his, ours, the witnesses, and right there, in front of everyone, we're going to confront them. My mama shook her head. It's going to be a terrible scandal. It has to be. It's the only way I don't lose everything, Mama. It's the only way to protect my children. They accepted. My daddy said he would make the invitations personally, but without explaining the reason. He would just say it was an important family gathering. Everyone would come out of respect. I left my parents' house relieved. I had their support, I had the evidence, I had a date, but there was still a week to go. A whole week pretending I knew nothing. A week living with those two vipers under my roof. Those were the longest days of my life. Every morning I woke up and had to look at Roy. Had to pour him coffee. Had to ask if he had slept well. Had to smile when he left for work. And Marilyn, my sister, every afternoon she came to help me in the kitchen, chatted with me, told me funny stories to make me laugh. And I laughed. I pretended everything was normal, pretended I loved her as I always had. But inside, I was burning. Inside, I was counting the hours until Sunday. There was one night Marilyn sat with me on the porch after the kids were asleep. The night was pretty, full of stars. Eleanor, I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? For taking me in here, for being so good to me when I was broken by that broken engagement. You're the best sister anyone could have. She took my hand. Her hand was warm. I love you so much. You know that, right? I looked into those clear eyes that seemed so sincere. I love you too, Marilyn. I lied, but I lied so well she believed me. She smiled, squeezed my hand, and went back to her little room. I stayed there on the porch looking at the stars, feeling that warm hand in mine, the hand of the traitor, of the viper, of the woman who was sleeping with my husband and planning to steal my future. How could she? How could she look me in the eye, say she loved me, and at the same time do all that? I think that was the most painful part. It wasn't just the betrayal of the body. It was the betrayal of the soul. It was realizing that people you love are capable of lies so deep, so elaborate, that you question if you ever really knew them. Roy also continued with his routine. Every day he went out to work. Every day he returned late afternoon, ate, smoked, went to sleep. And every night, around 2, he got up with the usual excuse. Only now I knew he was going to check if the money was still there. And it was, because I had left those $50 enough so he wouldn't immediately suspect someone had looked. But I noticed he was nervous, anxious. There were few days left until the date of the escape. He checked the papers more frequently. Sometimes I saw him looking at the calendar hanging on the kitchen wall, counting the days. Once in the middle of the afternoon, I caught him packing clothes into an old suitcase he had taken from the closet. When he saw me, he closed the suitcase quickly. What are you doing? Nothing. Just sorting some old things here. Suitcase for what? Thought about taking a load to the trade fair in town next week. Need a better bag to carry stuff. He lied so badly, but I pretended to believe him. Ah, all right then. And I left the room. Friday arrived, 2 days until the Sunday gathering, 2 days until the truth exploded. I went to town again. This time, I really needed to confirm the final details with Attorney Miller. He received me in his office. I brought all the documents, all the money. He examined everything carefully. Eleanor, you secured more than enough proof. With this here, and with the family testimonies, there is no way they can deny it. He explained that at the Sunday meeting, I should present the evidence clearly, call witnesses who had seen Roy selling the goods, show the recovered money, read parts of the letters if necessary. And afterwards you demand he sign a document of asset separation and quitclaim on the real estate. He will return everything he sold or compensate in cash, and he leaves the house immediately, taking only his personal clothes. If he refuses, you register a formal complaint with the sheriff and file for divorce on grounds of adultery and abandonment, and he won't be able to sell anything else. And Marilyn? Marilyn is her parents' problem, but after a public accusation like that, she won't have the face to stay in the region. I left his office with everything planned. Every step was defined. Saturday arrived. The last day before the confrontation. That night was the worst of all because I knew it was the last night I was going to sleep in that house as a married woman. That the next day everything was going to change. My whole life was going to turn upside down. Roy slept peacefully. He didn't even get up in the middle of the night that time. He was tired. He had worked hard in the cornfield during the day. I stayed awake all night staring at the ceiling, rehearsing in my head every word I was going to say the next day. Every document I was going to show. Every gaze I was going to face. I was afraid. Very afraid. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of being called crazy. Afraid of losing everything anyway. But there was something stronger than fear. There was anger. There was indignation. There was the certainty that I deserved respect, that my children deserved a future, that I couldn't let two traitors destroy 15 years of work, sacrifice, dedication. When the sun rose on Sunday, June 3rd, 1962, I got out of bed a different woman. I was no longer the fragile, trusting Eleanor, who believed everyone. I was no longer the obedient wife who never questioned anything. I was a woman who had been betrayed, deceived, robbed, but who had fought in silence, who had planned every step, who had recovered what was hers, and who was ready for war. I put on my Sunday dress, the navy blue one I used for church. I tied my hair in a tight bun. I put a little powder on my face to hide the dark circles. Roy looked at me surprised when I came out of the room. "You going to church today?" "I'm going to my parents' house. Daddy called the whole family for a dinner. He asked for you to go too." "And Marilyn?" He furrowed his brow. "Your daddy hadn't said anything about that. He sent word yesterday. Guess I forgot to tell you." "I don't know, Eleanor. I have a lot of work here." Daddy insisted. Said, "It's important, family business." Roy sighed. "All right, let's go then." I got the kids ready, put on their good clothes. Marilyn also fixed herself up, put on a pretty dress, let her hair down. She was happy, thinking it was just a normal family dinner. We left the farm at noon sharp. Roy, me, Marilyn, and the 3 kids. We walked because my parents' house wasn't too far. Along the way, Roy and Marilyn almost didn't look at each other. They continued the charade that they had nothing to do with one another. But I saw the quick glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't paying attention. I saw the tension in their bodies. I saw her nervous smile. When we arrived at my parents' house, my heart almost stopped. There were people, a lot of people. My daddy had called everyone. There was my mama, my brothers, my sisters-in-law, Roy's parents, his brothers, neighbors, the pastor, the sheriff, Attorney Miller. Roy stopped at the gate looking at all those people. "Eleanor, what meeting is this?" I looked at him. I looked him right in the eye. "It's the meeting that is going to change our life, Roy." And I entered the house. The living room of my parents' house was full. Everyone standing, talking quietly, wondering why they had been called there. When we entered, silence fell like a stone. All those people looking at me, looking at Roy, looking at Marilyn. My daddy was seated in the main armchair, my mama at his side with a closed face. Attorney Miller was in a corner with a leather briefcase in his hands. The pastor looked serious, hands crossed over his black suit. I felt Roy's legs lock up beside me. He had understood. He didn't know exactly what, but he understood that something was very wrong. Marilyn looked at all of it confused, still without comprehending. My daddy got up from the chair. His voice resonated through the room. "Eleanor, you may begin." I walked to the center of the room. All those people formed a circle around me. I felt the weight of all those gazes, the weight of the shame I was going to pass, because even though I was the victim, I knew many were going to judge me. They were going to say I should have been a better wife, that I should have realized sooner, that I had fault in this somehow. But I took a deep breath and began. "I called all of you here today because I need the presence of witnesses for what I am going to say. Because what I am going to tell is grave, it is painful, and it involves my family, my marriage, and the future of my 3 children." My voice came out steadier than I expected. Maybe it was the rage giving me strength. Maybe it was the certainty that I was doing the right thing. 2 months ago, My sister Marilyn came to live in my house. She had just come out of a broken engagement and needed refuge. I welcomed her with open arms. I gave her a roof, food, affection. I treated her as I always treated her, like the sister she is. I looked at Marilyn. She was pale, eyes wide. I continued. But about a month and a half ago, I started noticing strange things in my house. My husband, Roy, started getting up every night with the excuse of a stomach ache. He spent over an hour in the bathroom. When he returned, he was perfumed, combed, washed. I started to suspect. I heard some murmurs in the room, women whispering, men exchanging glances. Until one night I decided to discover the truth. I left the house, walked through the yard barefoot, in the mud, in the cold, and peeked through the bathroom window. I paused. The silence was absolute. I saw my husband fixing himself up like a boy going to meet his sweetheart. I saw him counting money, a lot of money, money he hid from me under a floorboard. Roy's mama let out a stifled moan. His daddy was purple. After that, I stayed watching. And I discovered more. I discovered that every night, after fixing himself up in the bathroom, Roy went to the small room at the back of my house. The room where my sister Marilyn sleeps. Marilyn took a step back, as if she had been slapped. Roy stood like a statue, white as paper. I saw my husband entering that room. I saw them together. I saw him kissing my sister. I saw my sister kissing my husband. My mama started crying softly. My older brother clenched his fists. But it wasn't just that I discovered. I started investigating and found out that Roy has been selling our family's property for almost 2 months. He sold 5 heads of cattle. He sold a piece of land. He sold tools. He sold part of the harvest. All hidden from me. All without consulting me. I turned to Attorney Miller, opened the briefcase and took out the documents. I have here the receipts for those sales. Sales made without the wife's knowledge, without need, just to gather cash. I passed the papers to my daddy. He read them, passed them to Roy's daddy. The old man took the papers with trembling hands. When he read them, his face went gray. I continued. I also discovered that Roy had drawn up a deed to sell our house. The house where I've lived for 15 years. The house where I raised my 3 children. He was going to sell it without warning me, without consulting me. He was going to leave me on the street with the kids. I showed the document. The pastor took it, read it, shook his head in disapproval. And I discovered more. I discovered 2 bus tickets from Tulsa to Los Angeles, dated for June 10th, a week from now. I took the tickets out of my bag, showed them for everyone to see. Roy and Marilyn planned to run away together. Take all the money from the sales, abandon me with 3 small children. Without a house, without money, without anything. The silence in the room was sepulchral. You could hear people breathing. I looked at Roy. He had his head down, shoulders slumped, defeated. Then I looked at Marilyn. She was crying, tears running down her face. But they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of shame at having been discovered. My daddy stood up again. Roy, do you have anything to say in your defense? Roy lifted his head, tried to speak. His voice came out hoarse, low. I can't deny it. It's all true. His mama let out a scream, covered her mouth with her hands. And you, Marilyn? Do you have anything to say? Marilyn shook her head, crying. She couldn't speak. My mama got up from the chair, walked over to Marilyn, and in front of everyone, slapped her across the face. I raised a viper, a traitor, a shameless woman. Marilyn fell to her knees on the floor, sobbing. My mama turned her back on her. This woman is no longer my daughter. I don't want to see her in front of me anymore. I don't want to hear her name spoken in my house. Roy's daddy also got up, walked over to his son, and did something I never thought I'd see. He spat on the floor at his feet. You disgraced our family. You disgraced the name you carry. You are no longer my son. Roy stood there, receiving the rejection of his own father. Attorney Miller then stepped forward. There are legal matters to resolve. Roy sold assets without the family's consent, diverted funds, acted in bad faith. All of this can be addressed legally. He opened the briefcase again and took out a document. I prepared a separation agreement and property settlement. Roy will return all the money obtained from the illegal sales, sign a quitclaim deed on the house to Eleanor, and leave the residence immediately, taking only his personal clothing. The house, the remaining assets, and custody of the children will remain with Eleanor. He extended the paper to Roy. "You can sign now, voluntarily, in front of all these witnesses, or I can file a formal complaint with the sheriff and a lawsuit in court tomorrow morning. Then you won't be able to sell anything else, do any business in this county, and you'll still answer for fraud and abandonment." Roy took the paper with trembling hands. He read quickly, looked at his daddy, looked at me, looked at Marilyn, who continued on the floor crying. Then he took the pen Attorney Miller offered and signed. The sheriff, who had stayed quiet the whole time, stepped forward. "This document now has legal standing. It was signed in the presence of authorities and witnesses. Any violation will result in criminal charges." I took the signed document. My hands were shaking. It was real. It was actually happening. My daddy spoke again. "Roy, you have until tomorrow at noon to leave Eleanor's house. Take your things and go. We don't want you near this family anymore. And you, Marilyn, get up off that floor. You are going to go back to your house right now, pack your things, and leave your sister's property. And after that, we don't want to hear from you. You can go wherever you want to Los Angeles. To hell, it doesn't matter. But far from our family." Marilyn got up with difficulty. She tried to approach me. "Eleanor," I took a step back. "Don't speak to me. Never speak to me again. You stopped being my sister the day you slept with my husband." She sobbed louder. Then she ran out of the house, stumbling. Roy also started moving toward the door. But before he left, the pastor called him. "Roy, you know that what you did is a mortal sin, adultery, theft, betrayal. If you ever want peace in your conscience, you're going to need a lot more than signing a paper." Roy lowered his head and left. When the door closed behind him, my legs finally gave way. I sat in a chair, and only then, with everything finished, did I start to cry. I cried everything I had held back during those weeks. I cried for the betrayal. I cried for the humiliation. I cried for the 15 years of marriage that had turned to dust. My mama came to me, hugged me, stroked my hair. "You were very brave, my daughter, very strong. Many women would have stayed silent, would have accepted it, but you fought, and you won." The other women of the family also came, hugged me. Some cried with me, others gave me words of strength. The men stayed talking amongst themselves, discussing what to do with Roy if he tried to return, if he tried to cause trouble. I stayed there at my parents' house the rest of the day. I didn't have the strength to go back. The kids played in the yard, oblivious to everything. Thank God they were too small to understand what had happened. The next day, Monday morning, I returned to my house. When I arrived, I saw that Roy had already gone. The bedroom was empty, his closet empty. He had taken only his clothes, as agreed. Marilyn's little room was also empty. She had disappeared. No one knew where to. I stood there in the middle of the empty house, looking around. It was my house, now only mine and my children's. I had the money back. I had the documents. I had the house. I had my dignity, but I no longer had a husband. I no longer had a sister. And in the 1960s, a separated woman was viewed with pity or as a subject of gossip. The first few months were very hard. The story had run through the whole region. Everyone knew. Everyone commented. When I went to church, I felt the stares. When I went to the market, I heard the whispers. Some people treated me with pity, others with morbid curiosity. But I kept my head high. I worked double to keep the farm running. I hired a farmhand to help with the cattle. I took care of the garden, the chickens, the house, and I raised my 3 children alone. Years passed. Frank became a man, married, gave me grandchildren. Bobby, too. Caroline became a beautiful and strong woman who never let any man deceive her. I never heard from Roy again. Someone said he had gone to California, that he had gotten a job in a factory, that he had died some years later from liver failure. I don't know if it's true. I never cared to know. As for Marilyn, I heard nothing more either. My mama died without ever speaking to her again. My daddy, too. They say she went north, maybe Chicago. They say she married some stranger. They say many things. But to me, Marilyn died the day she betrayed her sister. Today, I am 97 years old. I have great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. I have a long life behind me. And when I look back at that 3-5-year-old woman who spied through the bathroom window and discovered the worst betrayal of her life, I feel pride. Pride because I didn't let myself be destroyed. Pride because I fought when it was easier to cry. Pride because I protected my children when it would have been easier to give up. That bathroom window showed me the most painful scene a woman can witness. But it also showed me something more important. It showed me what I am made of. It showed me that I am stronger than I ever imagined. And that, my dears, is the lesson I want to leave you with today. When life betrays you, when the people you trust most disappoint you, when you feel the world collapsing around you, remember, you are stronger than you think. You have inside you a strength you don't even imagine exists. Don't let anyone destroy you. Don't let anyone steal your dignity. Fight. Fight with intelligence, with courage, with determination. Because in the end, the only thing that really matters is not what others do to us, but how we decide to respond to it. And I decided to fight. And I won. If this story touched your heart, if you identified with what I told, leave me a like down here. Subscribe to the Grandma's Diary channel so you don't miss the next stories. And tell me in the comments where you are watching me from. Has anyone else gone through something similar? I would love to read your stories. Thank you for listening to me.